The light will never
Unleash.
die!
Xilonen Iansan. Strength. The pinnacle of excellence. And never struggle back. Shift. Do your master's bidding. My will and
I stand against the long night! It hurts the
Adaptive frosted. Manifest. Fearless. Boy. Let the world collide. By ordinance divine. Take your true form. First with flavor. Time to shine. Strike blood. My will embodied. Cryo incarnate. Swoosh. Here's the clue. Mind wield.
I don't think I need to cover why Skirk and Escoffier work synergistically, do I? Between the fact that there's like 87,000 videos already about this topic that discuss it at great length, and the hilarious fact that Skirk has a passive, whereby she increases skill talent levels, thus increasing the main DPS of both herself and Escoffier, well, we all understand why Escoffier works really well with her, right? And because Escoffier is a team healer, she's great with someone like Farina, who in turn is also great for a team like this because she can buff the DPS of herself, Escoffier, and Skirk. And on top of that, Farina's DPS is tied mainly to Salad Solitaire, i.e. her skill, so that aforementioned passive from Skirk also works on her. Instead, I want to tackle something that you will hear a lot about the Skirk team, which is of course the final spot, the final slot. Who is the best character to include as the final slot in your Skirk team? Well, the spreadsheet impactors will claim something like this, and that theory is probably spot on, but we now have something called the simulacrum, so it's time to finally, once and for all, put a definitive answer on this topic, put this topic to bed by showing, as best as I can, who is the best character to place in the final spot of the Skirk team. Before we begin, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And here are the 3 builds that I will be mostly sticking with for Skirk, Escoffier, and Farina, but there are a couple of teams where I have shuffled the stats around a little bit to take advantage of the final slots effect, so I'll let you know as that happens. Okay, you ready? Let's begin. The character I'm going to stick with for the most part is Shenhe. Now, her quills are great for both Skirk and Escoffier's DPS. So to some extent, Shenhe is not just buffing Skirk and Escoffier, she also has the role of batterying Escoffier with the rare moment of battering Farina instead, because she is of course using Favge. Here's the build that I'm using on Shenhe. The main note to keep in mind is that the Noblesse attack buff works for both her quills, Skirk, and Escoffier's DPS, so we kind of triple down on that. The stronger quills further add to Skirk and Escoffier's DPS, and occasionally with Shenhe's ult, there's that little bit of extra red shred, which will of course help Skirk and Escoffier in particular.
Transfiguration! Do your master's bidding! Off to the freezer! A burst of flavor! My wield!
someone I was rather curious about was Layla, because with her C4, she's actually got a scuffed version of Shenhe's quills, but they are effectively available throughout the rotation. They don't just stick around for like 3 seconds and then they're done. The thing is, they only affect normal attacks and charge attacks, and therefore only for the on-fielder. So in the meantime, Layla has some off-field DPS of her own, that is of course getting buffed by Escoffier and Farina, and she brings a shield. So if you're a Calamity of Eshu player, this would be an additional buff for you. Here's the Layla build. By running Tenacity of the Millilith, so long as her shield is around, thus allowing the stars from her skill to actually hit enemies, there is an attack buff for both Skirk and Escoffier's DPS.
Not now. Don't be scared. It's time to frosting. Here's on the loop. Mine to wield.
I also wanted to have a look at Rosaria, as not only can she battery the team pretty well with her skill on a low cooldown, but also because we normally build her with such high crit rate anyway, that it means that she can proc Favge a lot, whilst also providing the team with a team-wide crit rate buff. Because I'm a Finale of the Deep Galleries player instead of a Marechaussee Skirk player, the crit rate buff might not be an issue for me, but on second thought as I'm recording this, I may have forgotten to factor in the Cryo Resonance, so I may actually be overcapping on crit rate for Skirk right now. Either way, I can also further buff Escoffier and Farina's DPS, although at this point I'm definitely wildly overcapping crit rate on Farina. Here's the Rosaria build. It's the same idea as Shenhe, where having a Noblesse buff further boosts the DPS of Skirk and Escoffier, and this seems pretty much the way to go. I think, when comparing this team to, let's say, the Layla one, this is one of those rare instances where a fair bit more DPS from the final slot, at the expense of some DPS from Skirk actually, seems to be marginally better. But that might have been a function of luck. I was curious to see how much DPS I can get out of a Skirk team if I give Skirk some attack speed buffs. Now Dahlia is also an option, but I haven't built him at all, and I'd probably need to get him to level 90 if I want to reach that 40k HP threshold. Now oddly enough, this does seem to become a double healer team, and I do actually use Mika's healing, but I also try to get a Favge proc so that I can battery Farina a bit. Here's the Mika build. It's because I'm using Song of Days Past that I am using Mika's healing. So I suppose by the transient property of having a slightly shorter setup for the rotation, I could get more DPS by ignoring Escoffier's healing and funnel energy into Mika. but I'm choosing to use Escoffier's ult anyway since it does seem to be a perfectly decent hit of damage, and I think there would otherwise be a couple of seconds of downtime in this rotation anyway. Next up we have Yelan. Now compared to some of my other 5-star support, Yelan drops a fair few buffing capabilities in favor of quite a lot more DPS. To the point where, as we'll see in the end, Yelan ends up being the second highest DPS on the team. This is a team where Furina really shines by being able to give everyone on the team the damage percent buff from her fanfare. In return, Yelan can help battery Furina either directly or indirectly at least. So for this team, I've taken out some of Furina's ER in favor of more crit stats, and thus getting closer to that famous golden 1-to-2 ratio on crit. Here's the Yelan build. It's pretty much the same DPS build that I've always had on Yelan, with her C1 and R2 Aqua that I got by sheer accident. For those who weren't around for this deep Kategari lore, I got C1 Yelan in a single temple and I got 2 spare Aqua Simulacras, but I've forgotten how that happened. Yeah, you heard me. 2 spare Aquas. I have another R1 Aqua built for general purpose use amongst other characters. Next up, there's a non-freeze team with Xilonen and Iansan. This, for me, is more of just trying to get an idea of what the difference is between playing the premium Skirk team versus thinking outside the box. Because Skirk can maintain Iansan's Night Soul despite generally not wanting Iansan, and because C2 Xilonen not only can control when Iansan's healing duration effectively starts, thus helping with Symphonist of Sense, and massively alleviate any ER problems that Iansan would have, this kind of felt like a good idea just to see what the difference is. Here are the builds for Xilonen and Iansan, and with C2 Xilonen, both Skirk and Escoffier get plus 60% crit damage to play with. On top of that, we have the first Symphonist of Sense that I went out of my way to grab specifically for Iansan. But as it turns out, you can't actually stack Symphonist of Sense buffs, so having 2 of them on this team ended up being a bit of a waste. I haven't really figured out an alternative at this point, and, well, I suppose you can come up with an idea in the comments below. Because this is a rare moment where Skirk has some outside attack buffs that aren't just Noblesse or Tenacity, it seemed like Cryo Cups are a little better for Skirk in this team despite the still massive amount of damage percent coming from both the Scroll set and of course Iansan's C6.
Adaptive frosting! Control breathing!
lastly, there's the Mona option. Mona can provide a lot of damage percent for a short period of time, whilst also helping battery Farina with both her own particles and, in my case, the Fav Codex. However, because this team currently has no way of being a Hexarray team, we'll see if that changes soon, the only way we could extend the Omen duration was to keep the target frozen. Unfortunately, there are some attacks from Skirk that are blunt, probably her N5, which would then break the Omen and cause the bubble to pop. Between that and how I seem to run into ER problems with the Escoffier, I'm not feeling particularly keen on this team, just from a gameplay experience perspective. Here's the build on Mona. Once again, noblesse, so that's an additional buff for Skirk and Escoffier. I did try and run with Sith Mona, but that resulted in a DPS loss and energy problems for Farina. Because of that, and also because 3-star weapon on a 5-star character, I'm not going to bother running TTDS on Mona. I'm probably also running into fanfare uptime issues during Skirk's DPS window, so yeah, I'm not really a fan of Mona at all. So, with all that being said and done, let's put these characters into a ranking so that we have a better idea of what just happened. Obviously, this wasn't a super comprehensive list because I haven't built all of the Cryo and Hydro characters in the game, nor is there a universe where I would ever run something as absurd as Morlani in a Skirk team. It's not gonna happen. The rankings are as follows. No surprises that with a Skirk Escoffier team, trying to think outside the box results in the worst team, but only by a small bit thanks to the investment I've made on these supports. Meanwhile, in the least surprising discovery imaginable, the 5 stars are in fact better than the 4 stars. But I think it ultimately comes down to Shenhe versus Yelan. And evidently, on my team with my C1 R2 Yelan, she is in fact a little bit stronger than my level 81 Fav Shenhe. So for me, the strongest final slot for my Skirk team is in fact Yelan, although I suspect, because your mileage may vary, a lot of y'all may find that Shenhe is in fact your strongest final slot. But I think I'll still run Shenhe anyway, because I like seeing big numbers and she can also help battery Escoffier a lot more easily. That, and there's a lot of the Skirk shilling content that actually prefers having more Cryo on the team as opposed to having some Hydro on the team, so I should be able to handle something like the Secret Source Automaton, the Freeze Bot, a lot easier with Shenhe on the team with her Cryo field from her ult, rather than running someone like Yelan.
Xilonen Iansan, take your troop. At first, flavor.
Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. after all this testing, who is your strongest final slot for a Skirk team? Let me know in the comments. Is it different to mine? Is it different to even what the Spreadsheet Impact players have been saying? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.